Have you ever wondered why, even when everything seems fine on the outside, something inside you still feels heavy, tired, or quietly broken? So many people walk through life smiling, functioning, believing they're being strong, while carrying repressed emotions they've never given permission to speak. Emotional silence often looks like control, but deep inside it can turn into emotional pain, silent suffering, and a slow erosion of mental health and emotions. You keep going, you keep quiet, and you tell yourself it will pass, but your mind is listening to everything your heart is holding back. Have you ever felt that inner tension, that emotional exhaustion you can't fully explain? You're not alone. Many experience unexpressed emotions and emotional suppression without realizing how deeply it affects the mind and emotions. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you and bring clarity to things you felt but never named. You might recognize yourself in these words or see patterns you've never connected before. As we move forward, we'll gently uncover what really happens when hearts remain silent, why this inner pain doesn't disappear on its own, and how awareness can begin to shift what feels stuck inside. And as we talk about this silent struggle, it's worth pausing for a moment. If any of this resonates with you, if you felt this quiet weight, this emotional pressure that no one else seems to notice, take a second to acknowledge it. You don't have to explain everything, but you can leave a comment sharing what touched you most, or simply how this silence shows up in your own life. That exchange matters more than it seems. When you like this video, it helps this message reach others who may also be carrying emotional pain in silence, wondering if they're the only ones. And if this kind of reflection feels meaningful to you, subscribing is a way of saying you want to keep exploring these connections between mind, emotions, and faith together. This space grows through shared experiences, quiet honesty, and people who choose not to stay silent anymore. Let's continue, because there's more beneath the surface that deserves to be understood. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because silence has a cost that most people only discover when it's already weighing heavily on their mind and body. When emotions have no voice, they don't disappear. They don't dissolve with time or maturity. They are pushed inward, stored in places we rarely look at, and there they begin to shape our inner world in quiet but powerful ways. What starts as an attempt to stay strong slowly turns into mental tension, emotional fatigue, and a constant sense that something is off. This is the hidden impact of emotional silence. It affects your mindset, the way you make decisions, the way you interpret situations, and even how you see yourself. Many people believe they're protecting their peace by not speaking, but what's really happening is a slow internal accumulation of pressure. That pressure becomes inner pain, irritability, emotional numbness, or a tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. It's part of a journey most don't realize they're on, shaped by habits, past experiences, and unspoken expectations. There is a truth hidden in the background of this process. The mind is always listening. Every suppressed feeling leaves a trace, influencing your emotional landscape and your mental clarity. This is not weakness, it's human. And understanding this is often the first real transformation, because awareness changes how we relate to our inner world. When we begin to notice what silence has been doing behind the scenes, new questions arise, new revelations surface, and the possibility of a different path starts to emerge. This is where the real conversation begins, and where things start to shift. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a truth that often stays hidden in the background of our lives. The mind listens carefully to what the heart tries to hide. Even when we don't consciously think about our emotions, even when we believe we've moved on, the mind is still registering every unspoken feeling. Repressed emotions don't simply sit still, they shape our mental landscape, influencing our thoughts, our reactions, and the decisions we make every day. This is why so many people feel mentally exhausted without a clear reason, or emotionally overwhelmed by situations that seem small on the surface. There is an invisible connection at work here. When the heart is silenced, the mind takes on the burden. It carries the weight of unexpressed sadness, unresolved anger, and quiet fear. And over time that weight shows up as anxiety, confusion, loss of focus, or a constant sense of inner tension. This is the hidden impact few talk about. The mind doesn't separate logic from emotion as much as we think. It responds to what's suppressed, even when we pretend everything is fine. This is part of a deeper journey of awareness and transformation, one that challenges the belief that staying silent is the same as staying strong. In reality, silence often shapes our mindset from the inside out, influencing how we see the world and ourselves. When we begin to notice this truth, small revelations start to surface. We see the backstories of our own inner life, the patterns we didn't question before, and the emotional truths waiting to be acknowledged. And it's in this space of recognition that the conversation naturally opens to something even deeper, something that touches not just the mind, but the whole inner journey. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too." Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when emotions are repressed, the impact doesn't stay only in the mind. It quietly reaches the body as well. This is one of the most overlooked truths in this journey. Emotional suffering often finds physical ways to express what words never did. Anxiety shows up as constant alertness, a racing heart, or a feeling that you can't fully relax. Fatigue settles in, not just as tiredness, but as a deep exhaustion that rest doesn't seem to fix. Many people describe a weight on the chest, a tightness in the shoulders, or a pressure they can't explain, and they assume it's just stress or the pace of life. But behind the scenes, there is a connection unfolding. The body listens too. When the mind carries unspoken emotions for too long, the body becomes part of the conversation. Insomnia appears because the nervous system never truly feels safe enough to rest. Breathing becomes shallow. Energy drops. This isn't about fear or alarm. It's about understanding the real impact of silence on the whole system. Emotions and body are not separate departments working independently. They are in constant dialogue, shaping our mental clarity, our physical resilience, and even the decisions we make throughout the day. Recognizing this connection is not about blaming yourself, but about gaining awareness. Awareness changes perspective, and perspective opens space for transformation. When you begin to notice how your body responds to what your heart has been holding back, small but powerful revelations emerge. You start to see patterns, habits, and signals that were always there, quietly guiding your journey. And this awareness naturally invites us to look even deeper into what's happening beneath the surface, where emotional truth and physical experience meet. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when hearts remain silent, faith is often affected in ways that are subtle but deeply impactful. Many people continue to believe they still carry spiritual language and values, but something shifts quietly inside. Trust becomes cautious. Prayer turns shorter, more distant, or even avoided. There is a belief in God, yet a hesitation to open the heart fully, as if vulnerability itself had become risky. This is one of the hidden backstories of a suffocated faith. When emotions are repressed, they don't only influence thoughts and the body, they shape the inner spiritual posture as well. The heart begins to protect itself, and that protection slowly turns into distance, not from belief, but from connection. People often don't realize this is happening. They assume they're just tired, distracted, or going through a phase. But beneath that surface, there is an emotional truth waiting to be acknowledged. Faith was never meant to be lived in silence. When pain is unspoken, prayer can feel heavy, trust feels fragile, and the spiritual journey loses its sense of intimacy. This doesn't mean faith is gone, it means it's carrying unexpressed weight. And that weight influences mental clarity, decisions, and the way meaning is interpreted. Understanding this is part of a deeper transformation. It shifts the mentalidad from endurance to honesty. When we recognize how emotional silence shapes spiritual experience, revelations begin to surface. We start seeing how much energy has been spent holding things together instead of allowing them to be seen. This awareness doesn't accuse, it invites. It opens a space where healing can begin without pressure, without fear. And once that space exists, the journey naturally moves towards something even more profound, where truth, trust, and inner restoration start to reconnect. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because silence is rarely a random choice. Most of us learned it somewhere along the way. For many people, staying quiet about emotions was once a form of protection. Maybe it came from childhood, where expressing feelings led to criticism, dismissal, or punishment. Maybe it came from past experiences where vulnerability was met with rejection, misunderstanding, or pain. Over time, the mind makes a decision. It feels safer to stay silent, and that decision slowly becomes part of our mentalidad. Silence turns into a habit, then into an identity. In some families, emotions were never discussed. In others, strength was defined as endurance, not honesty. And in certain religious environments, vulnerability was confused with lack of faith, creating the belief that emotional pain should be hidden rather than brought into the light. These messages shape us more than we realize. They work behind the scenes, influencing our decisions, our relationships, and the way we relate to ourselves. The truth occulta here is that most people didn't choose silence because they wanted to suffer. They chose it because, at some point, it felt necessary. But what once protected us can later imprison us. As life moves forward, those old patterns remain active, even when the circumstances have changed. We keep carrying emotional weight without questioning why. This is part of a deeper journey of awareness and transformation. When we begin to see the origins of our silence, something shifts. We stop judging ourselves so harshly. We start to understand the impact of those early lessons and how they shaped our inner world. These revelations don't force change, but they open space for it. They allow us to gently question whether the rules we learned still serve us today. And in that questioning, a new possibility begins to form, one that invites honesty instead of suppression, and curiosity instead of fear, naturally leading us further into this conversation. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a truth that often goes unnoticed. Emotional pain doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It transforms. What we don't express doesn't vanish with time, it changes shape. It becomes irritability that surprises even us, a constant sadness without a clear reason, a sense of emptiness that no distraction seems to fill. Sometimes it shows up as emotional distance in relationships, a lack of patience, or a feeling that connection takes more effort than it used to. This transformation happens quietly, behind the scenes, shaping our mindset and influencing everyday decisions. Many people believe they've moved on, but what they've really done is adapt to carrying unresolved pain. And that adaptation has an impact. It affects how we listen, how we react, and how safe we feel being ourselves around others. Emotional pain that remains unspoken often creates a subtle disconnection, not only from people but from meaning, purpose, and spiritual depth. The heart starts to guard itself, and the mind follows, reinforcing patterns of self-protection that once felt necessary. This is part of a longer journey, one filled with small revelations about how inner experiences shape outer life. When we understand this transformation, we begin to see that the problem was never feeling too much, but feeling alone with those emotions. This awareness doesn't demand immediate change, it simply invites honesty, and honesty opens space for new perspectives, for different choices, and for a deeper understanding of how emotional truth influences mental clarity and relational health. As this realization settles in, it naturally leads us to question what happens when pain is finally acknowledged instead of reshaped, and what kind of inner shift becomes possible when silence no longer controls the narrative. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a quiet turning point that often goes unnoticed. The moment awareness begins healing. Up until now, much of what we talked about may have felt heavy, maybe even confronting. But here is a truth that brings relief. Simply recognizing emotional silence already changes the direction of the journey. Awareness doesn't fix everything instantly, but it softens the inner tension. It brings light into places that were operating in the dark. When you finally notice the patterns, the habits, and the emotional weight you've been carrying, something shifts in your mentalidad. You stop fighting yourself. You stop believing that silence is the only option. This is where transformation quietly begins. Not with pressure, not with forcing emotions out, but with understanding. Understanding that what you feel makes sense. That your reactions, your fatigue, your inner conflicts didn't come out of nowhere. They were shaped over time, behind the scenes, by everything that was never allowed space. This realization has an impact. It changes how you look at your own story. It brings compassion into the process. And compassion creates safety. When there is safety, the nervous system relaxes, the mind gains clarity, and new decisions become possible. This is the moment where healing stops feeling like a distant goal and starts feeling like a direction. You're no longer trapped in the same loop, repeating the same internal patterns without knowing why. Instead, you begin to see the truth occulta of your own inner world, and that awareness alone reduces the emotional pressure. It doesn't erase the pain, but it makes it lighter to carry. It reminds you that silence was a response, not a flaw. And once that becomes clear, the journey naturally opens into a new phase, one where emotions don't need to be feared or controlled, only understood. This is where hope quietly enters, the conversation, and where the possibility of real inner change starts to feel tangible, preparing us to explore what it looks like to give emotions a safe place to exist. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because awareness naturally leads to a question many people quietly carry. If silence has been shaping so much of my inner world, what does it look like to give emotions a safe place to exist? And the answer is not dramatic or instant. It's simple, human, and often much more gentle than we expect. Giving emotions space doesn't mean losing control or being consumed by them. It means allowing truth to surface without judgment. For some, this begins with reflection, taking moments of honesty to notice what is really happening inside, without rushing to fix it. For others, it shows up in sincere prayer, not polished or careful, but real, where faith becomes a place of openness instead of performance. Conversation also plays a role. Being heard by someone safe can change the internal narrative, shifting the mindset from isolation to connection. Writing is another quiet path, a way of translating inner chaos into words, revealing patterns and emotions that were previously hidden in the bastidors of the mind. And sometimes, emotional support comes through guidance, companionship, or simply knowing you don't have to carry everything alone. These are not magical solutions, they are possibilities, paths that invite transformation over time, not overnight. What matters is not the method, but the permission you give yourself to feel without fear. When emotions are given a place to exist, they stop needing to fight for attention. They soften. They inform decisions instead of controlling them. This process has an impact on how you relate to yourself, to others, and even to your spiritual journey. It creates room for clarity, for better choices, and for a deeper sense of alignment. And as this space opens, something subtle but powerful begins to unfold inside, guiding the journey toward an even deeper understanding of what it truly means to live without hiding from yourself. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a hidden truth that many people have never clearly heard. You don't need to remain silent to be strong. For a long time, behind the scenes of our mindset, we've learned that enduring everything in silence is a sign of maturity, solid faith, and self-control. But this idea, when not questioned, ends up shaping decisions that hurt inside. Staying silent may seem like protection, but often it's just survival. And surviving is not the same as living life to the fullest. Speaking, feeling, and opening up don't diminish anyone. On the contrary, they are acts of care. Care for the mind, which needs space to organize thoughts and emotions. Care for the body, which feels the impact of what is left unsaid. And care for faith, which is strengthened when it ceases to be a mask and becomes a place of truth. There is a silent transformation when you allow yourself to express what you carry. It's not about excessive exposure, nor about dramatizing pain. It's about honesty. It's about recognizing limits, embracing vulnerabilities, and understanding that vulnerability is not weakness. It's awareness. Throughout this journey, many revelations emerge. You notice patterns, understand reactions, and reconsider choices. The impact of this goes beyond the emotional. It reaches your way of relating to others, your spirituality, and even the way you make decisions in your daily life. When pain finds a safe place to exist, it ceases to govern your steps, and something changes inside, subtly, almost imperceptibly but deeply enough to make room for a new kind of strength, a more human strength, more balanced, more aligned with who you truly are. And it is precisely at this point that the conversation begins to touch on something even more essential, something that deserves to be looked at calmly and mindfully. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." If all of this resonated with you in some way, perhaps it's worth sticking around. I create this content precisely to foster a space for reflection, understanding, and care for what we feel inside. So if it makes sense, subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me. And tell me in the comments that you made it this far by writing, "This message was for me." I'll know exactly how this video reached you. If you felt a connection along the way, please like it. It helps the content reach other people who might need to hear this right now. And before you go, there's a video here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this conversation. Click on it and continue reading there.